This kind of loving, it they do my body tanana. It they make me one day your life banana. Do it. This kind of loving, say it they do my body tanana. It they make me one day around you na. Dance to my conto, make you banana. Oh la, choro, jara choro. Never leave me when I need you by my side. I'm all why just sucker when you can, oh, then you can. I'm all why just sucker. Me, I go love you all day, love you all night, all the time. Yeah. Yeah, joro, deep down, baby girl, I know you wanna deep ride on it. Every night she says she just want to climb on it. See her skin spoon with they put design on it. Wow, wine. Baby girl, I know you wanna deep ride on it. Every night she says she just want to climb on it. See her skin spoon with they put design on it. Wow, I'ma one time now. And so you did come on, two times. So I'ma do it one time. I'ma give up me do it two times. Yeah. Star boy, she do.
wanna stay here on my own. Here on my own. Every time that I look, there's another headline on my phone. Yeah, the world needs some loving. There's so much gone bad. Didn't know just how good that we had it. So tell me something nice, give me something to right these wrongs. The chaos has gotten to my head. Like water, it fills with regret. What a time to be alive. Are we all just pretending that the world isn't ending? I'm afraid that I ain't done enough. And if we go up above, I never learned how to love. Maybe this is a sign, baby, wouldn't you just like to know? We ain't living this right, there was only so far we could go. The drama has gotten to my head. Like water, it fills with regret. What a time to be alive. Are we all just pretending that the world isn't ending? I'm afraid that I ain't done enough. If we go up.
Good evening, and welcome to the California African American Museum. My name is LAXART Mitchell, and I'm the Manager of Education and Public Programs here at CAM. It's a pleasure to have you with us this evening for In Conversation, Saul Williams and Hamza Walker. Tonight's exciting program is co-presented by the Los Angeles Philharmonic's Humanities Program as part of the Power to the People Festival, which is supported generously by Linda and David Shaheen. We are so grateful for this partnership and would like to acknowledge and thank our friend Julia Ward. I don't know where you are, Julia, but thank you, there you are, okay. Multi-hyphenate, multidisciplinary artist Saul Williams has been breaking ground for more than 20 years. After gaining global fame for his poetry and writings at the turn of the century, Williams has performed in over 30 countries and read in over 300 universities with invitations from the White House, the Sydney Opera House, Lincoln Center, the Louvre, and the Getty Center, to countless villages, townships, community centers, and prisons across the world. Most recently, Williams released the groundbreaking film Neptune Frost, which we hope you'll get to see when it's released in theaters here shortly. Williams joins us tonight for an intimate reading of work, followed by a conversation with LAXART Director and art scholar Hamza Walker about the intersection of art and politics in America. In 2016, Walker became LAXART's second director after 22 years as curator and director of education at the Renaissance Society in Chicago, a non-collecting museum devoted to contemporary art. Walker was a juror for the Venice Biennale's prestigious Golden Lion Award. In February 2019, Walker curated the talks and programs for the first edition of Freeze Los Angeles. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome both Hamza Walker and Saul Williams.
Wait in the wing. You just wait in the wings, then okay. Hello, everyone. Hello. Good to see you. I think I'm going to keep this casual. Extremely casual. Hello. Citizens, children of the night, bearers of the day torch, scorched and burned, burn not, the dam is broken, the curse is fled. Once muddied and still, the river runs, red. All those ships that never sailed, the ones with their seacocks open that lied scuttled in their stalls. Today, I bring them back, huge and intransitory, and let them sail forever, forever, their recurrence uncurrent. The wind cannot serve its roots currency. Currently moon-marked and sun-sparked, unmarked bills, will I am certain I speak a new language, as is always the first sign of a new age. I had begun to believe my blackened toenails were on path to decay, but in truth they had begun the gradual process of crystallization. I am he who walks in wind-scorned feet with toenails of amethyst and rose quartz, my path now crystal clear. I am come to tell you she is here. It is not written. No penmanship is ever cardinal with her character. Note, books are carefully folded forests, void of autumn, bound from the sun. Likewise, she made a residence on the outskirts of history, on the dark side of the moon, where the searchlight of the sun cannot spot her nor rot her. The seed of forbidden fruit, every tree has a hidden root, yet she has come to light, the swelling patchwork of vibrant dreams. And to think of the girlfriend I was tempted to break up with because she slept too much. I now know they nurtured her there. They slept in packs, dreamt in cycles, nursed her in shifts, and became her on rotation. Unnamed every time she was named that she would not be known even unto herself. Undressed every time she was dressed that she would not be recognized as anyone other than herself. They blindfolded her and spun her in circles that she would find her way here by another means in her intuition. And she is come. I'm a simple, disoriented man in her presence. I wear my loincloth over my eyes and ejaculate too soon. Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. I prayed to you and cupped the wind, and in doing so, barred her entry into a century, 100 years of solitude. I will now pray with my hands outstretched, with these psalms etched into my palms. Most beloved, I am certain of nothing more than your existence. 1,000 ants crawling under a log may find themselves exposed to my childlike search for you. My collie, flower, I'm eternally destroyed by your love. No longer am I eligible for any workers' pension. My friends laugh at me and talk behind my back. They say that you've changed me, and I am. I'm like a survivor of the flood, walking through the streets drenched with God, surprised that other drowned victims are still walking and talking. Maybe there's hope. I rush to each victim's side, sucking what I can of you out of your various incarnations, pumping their stomachs and filling them. To touch them is to touch you, to kiss them is to kiss you. My friends, love is an art form slightly removed from its element. Now one may ask, well, what does this mean? I respond, I've made it up, but it shall be from now on. From now on, cities will be built on one side of the streets that soothsayers will have wilderness to wander and lovers space enough to contemplate a kiss. She kisses if she alone could forge his signature of the sun. I closed my eyes, although I never knew the difference. I stood before a brighter light at lesser distance, and then a feeling, almost if nothing were ever bound to be repeated ever again, as if history had been as masterfully created as the Great Pyramids, and to reconstruct or relive any given moment I have to stem from an understanding of how the pyramids were built from the top down. And if one could understand such majesty, one would also understand that pyramids were made of flesh, and that kisses are portals, our sacred breath shifting through hidden corrals and passageways. I will find my way to eternity within you. When I can feel you breathing into me, I, like a stone gargoyle atop some crumbling building, spring to life a resuscitated angel. I sweep through city streets, my wings outstretched, making mothers clutch their young. And remember, and do you remember, dear ones, or has your history forsaken you? There are mysteries coded in song, chants sung round fires, all incantations calling forth this day. On this day, the drunks vomit in unison, though last night they drank from different cups. Children laugh and play, introducing their parents to invisible friends. A country girl smiles and two trees blossom out of season. Sea suns awaken, our mother has returned to wave us from uncertainty, once title. Twice born of wooden ships, thrice formed through mother's hips. Mother ships grace two lips, a poet's garden. 2 for 5, the going fast, the future's bargain. That stranger Herman named the river's parting. Hurry up, things blurry up, the sun is darkened. Rivers like oceans, oceans like answers, questions in cloud forms, raindrops and stanzas. To be or not to see or not to. She had eyes like two turntables mixed in between. My dreams and reality blend in ancient themes, the basis of Isis cross-faded to Ankh. The beat drops like a cliff, overlooking my heart. I'll stop there. Thank you. That is an excerpt of a poem called Said the Shotgun to the Head. I'm going to read some more recent poems, or excerpts of poems. In an age where going viral was both a curse and an ambition, we had elected a pathogen. The symptoms were systemic. Police plagued our streets, uniformed in synthetic fabrics of authority, infected all they affected. Hospitals were overcrowded servers, streaming a live feed through air pipes, screened through a nurse's eyes. The virus entered our system like the system we entered at birth. Firewalls were burning crosses. We were not immune, born in a celebrated cell. Walls and borders were violent fictions, property and appropriations, vintage algorithms. We were the business of the state. Earth as my hard drive, sky as my witness, we are buried here. Our sacred deposit will blossom from unmarked graves, rare metal through mainframe, program master slave. As if technical advancements of the digital age were not rooted in basic analog exploitation, as if the exchange rate of our mortality was not worth its weight in gold, as if we had not been dying for the system to crash. We are the antibodies, the essential workers, powering the circuitry of a corporate patriarchitecture, the controlled variable of every virus and vaccine for the pathogenic machinations of a science that was never neutral. We owe them nothing. They pronoun, they, them, they voted for this, they slow motion coup, they enter the body through the mouth and nose or by touch, they stick to the surface, they can float in the air for hours after they already gone, they storm City Hall and the Capitol with assault rifles. They are not terrorists, they the police, they want all the smoke. Decoded moisture to plant a jungle. New calculations before we knew numbers. Red wind for news. Anthropocentric timelines painted the invoice on my chest before I charged the world. A splash of red. Harvest and ceremony. Calculators of stone. Magmaticians. Fossil to fossil fuels. Ashes to dust. Source molten power. Industrialized creation, make life easier through greater means to kill, weaponize water, give it the facial recognition features that makes it run through tourists, demilitarize information sharing and incorporate it, master said and unsaid, achieve in learning what is already known and understood. Science can only prove me right. Syntax Führer, born of the resistance that birthed me, made music of everything. Is somebody recording these cries, bodies blown through concrete? No better bass than that. Bombs, buildings crumbling, repetitive gunfire got bass in it, but the cries drowned it out. Sampled the bomb blast in the Pacific and let it run to the earthquake on the other side. Looped it, whale screams was fire, harpoons and everything. Radiation make it sound analog. Needed something death could dance to. Changed my whole style up, so used to the slickness, sorrow, streamlined in the story. Dancing alone in front of speakers, my whole life impregnating tangents, so close to the point, words brand new but not the anger, learned to kill through detachment and called it a high score. Look how they treat us. Whispered the innocent sister, her life barely missed her, then patience approached and he kissed her. Love's like a transistor, feelings have features, innocent creatures distort what love teaches, trade crypt scriptures for preachers, communion for leeches, earth's mountainous speakers, bombard and boom beat us, on guard to defeat us, you hate us, you need us, you are us, you wreak us, the martyrs and seekers, so questions and reapers, more grime than grim reapers, designers, diseases, resolve to repeat us, you kill us, you eat us, you grow corn to feed us, you crowd us, you beat us, you crave us, you need us, you slaughter and bleed us, you tax us, harass gas us, pray and then eat us. You slay us and feed us from POTUS to penis, the aborted fetus, the corpses, the meat make sausage of Jesus. The law says to bleed us, we embody greed, lust, the wrong shepherds lead us. Look how they treat us. Counterfeit colonel of one-man army seeks heiress of Wonder Bread for deli of dogmas. Farm-raised catfish of fathomless beginnings seeks mermaid of primordial waters for upstream marathon in depthless stream of consciousness. Armless conductor of styrofoam orchestra seeks brass-sectioned robot for radio broadcast of new symphony written in blood. C# for details. Dead organist seeks prenatal plastic surgeon for everybody knows job in purgatorial pursuit of skeletal bones sent down the wrong pipe. Handyman foot doctor with specialty in dog paws seeks Elizabeth Taylor type for long walks in circles and pumice stone skipping in the fountain of youth. Young nigga seeks truth. Yeah, all right, yeah. Okay. Some thoughts travel from distant places, are not born within our borders, must pass through heightened security fortified by age-old tradition, norms of societal culture, misgivings of prejudice, and misplaced judgment in order to arrive peacefully in our minds. Our minds are high-walled fortresses where security councils gather to preserve comfort, enforce what we have been taught to value, discern and determine what is real. We depend on our minds to guide and aid us from one day to the next. Some of us see our minds like muscles we exercise with theorems, riddles, thoughts, and thought processes. We gather and store information, play word games, rap, solve problems, work to the best of our abilities. We accept and reject labels and categorizations at face value. We sometimes choose lifestyles based upon the accepted labels we identify with, which then take the form of beliefs. Beliefs are the police of the mind, which is to say, fuck the beliefs. They are either uniform or universal, armed or unarmed. They hold the power to confiscate material they consider hazardous or incredible. They profile experience and information as bullshit, nonsense, get the fuck out of here. They convene regularly with the Thought Security Council and act according to their constitution of what is real or unreal, possible or impossible, and they are sometimes, well, often mistaken. The question is, what is your mind's immigration policy? Do you detain foreign thoughts that may have entered your mind illegally, against the wishes of your parents, pastors, teachers, or simply against the security of your own comfort? Are there other thoughts you have allowed to go unchecked, unquestioned because they seem aligned with your so-called identity? Are you certain that you are not a victim of identity fraud? All right, well, this one is called When the Ocean Was the Internet, You Were New to Me. They ordered us online, kept inventory like the Gap, kept records of slaves through commodity and shipping insurance, listed how many were on each ship, arrived in each state, each country, each continent, each island for each year, kept track of how many died, how many got sick, how many got pregnant, how many were thrown overboard. It's all written down. People had paid good money, paid to be protected against acts of God and nature. They invented new business models when old ones grew weary through constant gaze and inquiry, fought against transparency until public image demanded they support it, fought for corporations to be treated as people, using legislation intended to give slaves the rights of humans and citizens. Blessed is he who tends to ignore it. I like the title of this poem better than the poem. The title of this poem is, I for one am happy they keep casting white actors to star in Old Testament flicks. The answer to the question that Wings ask. Is it a quest for celebrity, validation, a desire to be seen as one who counts, to be among the counted, a limited number of seats given to some, denied to others, the latest American religion taking off, or Scientology left off, the great mind control, the belief you can become, the belief that you can know? Is it a matter of cultivating envy, making others wish they could have what you have, live the life you live, the God of those who beat the odds, cultivating talent, investing 10,000 hours, cultivating ideas or exploiting them, thinking of what others have not thought of, making communication easier, exploiting the unknown, fulfilling people's unwanted desires, making them feel they can't live without something they have always lived without? Is it self-actualization or self-image actualization? Is it the desire to see one's name in print or in lights? Do the successful escape the everyday travails of worry, disappointment, debt, and doubt? Do heroes? Do mothers? Do martyrs? Is it about self-sacrifice or having to sacrifice nothing? Is it about changing the times in which we live, exercising compassion through entrepreneurial individualism, striking gold, being of service, the golden rule, divine intentions, raising families that share those intentions? Is it more about ambitions than intentions? Setting a goal, having a drive, libido? Are we acting out a sexual fantasy to control, to dominate, to be controlled, to be dominated? Is it about philosophy, described and prescribed patterns of thought, delineating a structure, a framework? Are we talking to ourselves? Are we addicted? Are we cultivating addiction? Should we replace weed with tobacco or tobacco with weed? Water with wine or wine with water? Sugar with honey or agave? Meat with tofu? Ridding ourselves of toxins? Is that it? Ridding ourselves of the unwanted, the undesirable, the unhealthy? Are your thoughts simply an echo of how you feel? Are your feelings as good as thoughts? Can you distinguish between the two? What is the purpose? Money? Does that solve the problem? What is the problem? What is the question? Will how I ask the question determine the answer? What time is it? Who set the clock? Who coded, decoded time? Are there different ways of keeping it? What is the standard? What is the guiding principle? Get rid of fear? Every individual knows what it feels like. Everyone is wrapped in their own emotions, beliefs, timelines, and connections. You can make as much sense of it as you wish or retreat into your shell of beliefs and disbeliefs. Will you observe, take action, build, contribute, sit back, doubt, grow fat through comfort or through worry? What if nothing you are convinced of is actually the case? What if it works the way it does in your presence because it's what you expect of it? What if the truth is not enough? What if it's not enough to be sincere in your actions and deeds if you must also learn to listen and not blame, to see your own faults and not list those of others? What if the other is a lie? If nothing is original, unique, or without purpose, what if it means that you must sometimes sit in silence and not defend yourself? What if you are not alone and alone, unable to see the reason or understand, and your understanding in all of its glory manages to still get in the way? What if your mind works against you? What if it is simply not your time and the stars are right where they belong for it all to make sense and you choose not to believe it? What if you are too tired to write or think and the music is too loud to concentrate or fall asleep? What if when you turn off the music, your mind starts to orchestrate the silence and every creak of wood, the wind through trees, the call of birds, your heartbeat is enough to dance? Dance. Done? Thank you. We're going to talk now, huh? All right.
That was beautiful. That was really, really wonderful. I mean, I'm going to apologize in advance. I don't even want to ruin the night, after that reading. But yeah. So, just hearing you read, and I'm just going to hit on what is about to hit us, meaning in theaters tomorrow. And art and politics, that old chestnut. Politics of form. In hearing you read, I was wondering about the translation, if it can be called that, of your ideas, your thinking, as they amount to what's called poetry, into a feature-length film. And do you see a difference in those forms for you? Because in a lot of respects, and I've only seen the trailer for the film, I don't, which is, I think, and I mean that by way of a compliment, right? That I see the film, hearing you read, it almost feels like, oh my God, to go from writing poetry into being a fabulous performer to then making a feature-length film is quite a step. So I was wondering if you could talk about those two forms, with the notion of the politics of form in mind, not necessarily the politics of content, right? But what does poetry do and what does film do, and to think of that film as a piece of poetry.
Sure. Well, I mean, I do see screenwriting as a technical craft, right? Especially as it has been formatted through, I think regardless of the gaze, whether we're talking about the Western gaze or we're talking about new forms of narrative, right? Because I don't believe there's only one way of telling a story, and that the way in which we tell stories here in LA and Hollywood is the only way that a story can be told, right? However, because of the all-encompassing, reality of cinema and what that entails in terms of lighting, actors, and what have you, it's still going to be technical.
Right.
That being said, I do think the film is very poetic.
How could it not be?
But that was a goal, that was a goal. But still, in terms of your question, particularly in terms of translation, because even that operates on many layers, right?
Yeah.
Because the first layer of translation, beyond the politics of form itself, was that the script, which I wrote in English, and the lyrics to the songs, I composed the music and then wrote lyrics to the song in English, all of that text and those lyrics were translated into Kinyarwanda, Kirundi, Swahili, by poets and musicians in Rwanda and Burundi that we worked with. The film is not in English. And so as a poet, my excitement is in being able to say, I wrote the subtitles. The text on screen, that's what I was fucking with. But in order to earn that text on screen, the work that we had to do with translation was intense, because of course expressions and how you find, a way of expressing something that feels right in the language that it's said in.
Right.
That corresponds with that which has been written is quite a dance.
Right.
And so there's that. Now, in terms of the politics of form, especially as someone that comes from, you know, the world of what is commonly termed as like spoken word poetry, and although I would never refer to myself as a slam poet, I understand that I'm referred to as such. And that the prevailing form within, you know, contemporary poetry in those worlds is free verse, right? It's oftentimes a rebellion against, you know, many given forms, many studied forms. Of course, now that statement is not so true just because there are kids that grew up listening, you know, going to poetry readings and poetry slams and open mics, who then went and got their masters in poetry and are now releasing books and saying, I could rock any which way you want.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, but so could we. So the politics of form in terms of narrative, now that's quite interesting, right? Because it's more than the politics of language. It's also brings us into the politics of art, the gatekeeping of art, the gatekeeping of styles. You know, I mean, you listen or think about the way that some people initially would describe someone like Thelonious Monk, like he was playing wrong, like he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, it sounds absurd now.
Right. Yeah.
But that's how they approach this stuff. That's how they approach these geniuses who were capable of so much, who understood all of the forms in order to riff and break, you know, through into new forms. It's been a beautiful, beautiful challenge in terms of writing this script. I mean, I took my time. You know, most Neptune Frost is a musical, and in the case of most musicals, someone would have written the music and someone else would have written the text. So I took on a lot on my end, and then I collaborated with Anisi Uziman, who was not only co-directing but also was the cinematographer, who also, like, you know, we built the cinema lights in Rwanda because there are no cinema rental facilities in Rwanda, and it was cheaper to build them there than it was to well, not that it was cheaper, it also didn't make sense for us to spend large sums of money to bring stuff in from France or India or South Africa or what have you when we were in Rwanda and wanted to spend that money in Rwanda. So we went to LED factories and built LED panels and 18 kilos and the rails and the dolly and the Apple, you know, boxes and the whole nine. We built everything there. Wow. We built the film takes place in a village made of recycled computer parts. So we brought in 2 tons of e-waste from the Congo and Uganda and from Rwanda itself to build this village and the costumes and all this stuff. So I say all that to say, through all that, I guess, playfulness and innovation and what have you, we still are concerned with form because of how it, essentially what it takes for it to enter you, what it takes for it to enter the reader, the listener, the observer, the
form
viewer.
is a handshake.
Yeah.
Between you and the receiver.
It's that.
What am I reading? Am I reading a poem? Am I reading an essay? Am I reading a novel? Right. So what's the form? Right. What genre?
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps. Yeah. And you want it to go down smoothly, right? Which is maybe why it's more exciting sometimes to focus on a screenplay rather than a poem.
But it's interesting. The first poem you read, the first word of the first poem is citizens. And so instantly, it's a mode of address.
Indeed.
And I thought it was very Shakespearean. You know, and so in terms of you just saying you wanted it to go down smoothly, you know, I felt instantly it was familiar, right? At least in terms of form.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, in terms of poetry and form, one, I grew up on a lot of Shakespeare. I grew up between Shakespeare and hip hop. Like I was a theater kid, but I happened to grow up in New York in the 80s, so I felt like the luckiest kid in the world in terms of, the music that I was exposed to and breakdancing and all this shit. And we were Afrofuturists then, you know what I'm saying? Like we were dancing like robots, and, like obviously. What are they talking about? Like it's Afro present, right? So I believe, I don't want to say I believe in it, but I enjoy heightened language. We were discussing this last night, the role that, I know people talk about Black excellence and all this stuff, but there's something about elegance, the elegance of language. There's something about elegance, that elegance that's like Sketches of Spain elegance, Ellington elegance.
Yeah.
There's something about that, which is like, I like grime and dirt and all that, but even that can be extremely elegant when it's done right.
Oh yeah.
And so with that first poem, which was written a long time ago, there is something inspired by Shakespeare. It's true in a sense, but it's really inspired by the beat poet Bob Holman.
Oh, Bob, yeah.
It's really inspired by that. Bob Holman kept a vow of silence for 10 years after the murder of Robert Kennedy. And the first time that he spoke was at a wedding party. And all of the players of the Beat generation were there, Ginsberg, Ferlinghetti, all these people. And he hadn't spoken for 10 years, and he stood up at the party. And he said, all those ships that never sailed, the ones with their seacocks open that lie scuttled in their stalls, today I bring them back huge and intransitory and let them sail forever. And I love that story. I'm like, really? Is that what he said?
Yeah. That's worth waiting for.
But that's form for that ass. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were a child of the 80s, as am I. And we find ourselves straight up, no bones about it. You can even hear it on the radio day in, day out, about being in a culture war. And as children of the 1980s, and when I say 1980s, I am pretty much referring to being a child of that round of culture wars. And so I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about maybe then and now, right? So the idea of we find ourselves in another culture war, or is it that the ebb and flow, did the first war end? Is this an intensification? Have the lines been redrawn, right? The troops have been refortified, let's say, right? So with the first round, with the backdrop of the AIDS pandemic, so on the one hand, did we ever think that we would see the coming of gay marriage? When to be honest, given the rhetoric and the temperature and the cruelty of the 1980s, I didn't know if I would ever see that, in a lifetime. So on the one hand, to see that achieved, but yet here we are in another wave of attacks on rights.
Well,
so just as an example of then and now, I was wondering if you had any thought.
Well, I mean, my first thoughts on that are what I feel we see in the 80s is in many ways, is the success of COINTELPRO.
Oh.
You know? Because when I think of what we were on the precipice of with the Black Arts Movement and the Black Power Movement and what have you, and what that turned into, right? In terms of gangs, in terms of like,
Yeah.
shit that, you know, crack brought into communities, all this sidetracking. There's a lot of sidetracking,
Oh.
you know? Yeah, you know, I think about even like, I think of it even in terms of cinema. I read something crazy. We were talking about it the other day, which is that, you know, when The Wiz came out, what year was The Wiz? 70,
79, 78.
78, right? It was a flop.
Yeah.
It was a flop in cinemas. And all these things had built up through blaxploitation and what have you, and they had put all this money in The Wiz, and it flopped. And as a result, Hollywood, for the next 10, 15 years, was like, we're not really trying to invest in black film because we tried, and it failed. Now, we would never know that The Wiz was a flop because a little while later it came on TV, and we all saw it, and, you know. But in terms of the politics of the time and the sort of, I mean, I call it a sort of patriarchitecture, right? The savage, you know, venomous disdain for women as perpetuated by, I mean, we can point up there, but we see it every day in our lives. We hear it it's everywhere. But the pushback on reproductive rights or a woman's autonomy of, you know, control over her whole body, own body is dumbfounding, which is a weak word. But when those things go down, I don't even feel like we need words. We need weapons, you know, like it's... And I get it, words are weapons, blah, 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 now. Nonetheless, in terms of your question and the ebb and flow and the cyclical nature of the attack, right? If you want to put it in terms of war.
Yeah.
I mean, quite obviously, you know, like people are arguing about or restricting the right to teach us shit in classrooms that they never taught us in classrooms, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, most of the shit that we know about ourselves and our like we didn't learn in classrooms. And the thing about the 80s, or maybe it's the late 70s, like I remember when we took off for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, before it was a holiday. We would take that day off from school. Some of y'all remember that. We boycotted schools and businesses on that day before it became a national holiday. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I hear, but what the fuck do I care about holidays? We have been at war all along.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. We've been at war all along. What they are doing has been planned since leaders were killed, since certain laws were passed. They have been planning this. And if anything, the concerted attack that comes, you know, from every direction, right? Because I mean, I felt it when like the first reality show ever aired and people started watching, I was like, this is a problem. And I wasn't even thinking about Trump. It had nothing to do with Trump. It had nothing to do with that. It just had to do with this feigned reality and this attention span and this idea of entertainment as escape and where that might lead. I wasn't thinking then about white people's susceptibility to whiteness like I am today. And what I mean by that is, I mean, you could see even the best intention fall into saying shit where you're like, fucking hell, there's no hope. Fucking hell. Damn. I mean, yeah, I wrote poems thinking that they would, go out of style. Certain poems, not build in relevancy. But I'm thinking about your question. I'm dancing around, but I'm thinking about the relationship between the 80s and now.
No, I think you took me back by referring to the COINTEL program.
Well, yeah,
right.
because,
I mean, so it's like I was making the link between a really particular moment in the late 80s, but I think it's interesting that you went back to the 60s.
Well,
right.
the COINTEL program didn't stop in the 60s.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it did, but
I know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But to argue, even not that it did stop in the 60s, but to then say, to register its effects in the 80s, right? The dismantling of a certain,
Well, when people were repping their sets, I'm in LA. There is a direct line from the Us organization and Black Panther Power, Black Panther Party, to those gangs. There is a direct line from the CIA. We know now what they did. This is all connected. These aren't conspiracy theories.
Right.
I'm not talking about Fauci or
Right,
some
yeah.
shit. You know what I'm saying? We know this now. It's documented.
Yeah.
Very well documented.
Yeah. But just to paint that picture of a continuum.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, I think you answered the question perfectly when you said, no, we've always been at war.
We have.
In some sense, are always under attack.
But we become deluded at times, right? There's this thing, like, we've picked enough on the people who were talking about post-racial shit when Obama got elected. And that was,
Yeah.
We've picked enough on those people. I don't want to call any names, but yeah, obviously there were lots of delusions. There's lots of, luckily for us, there are new generations of voices that articulate more clearly and more succinctly exactly what needs to be said, so that when they say, that is respectability politics, when they call shit out, it's so exciting. I'm like, okay, this is what these poetry readings were for. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't mean mine, I mean the open mics. You know what I'm saying? The open mics. Because the distinction that I see between then and now is that then we sat in back rooms and talked amongst ourselves about white supremacy, and now we talk about it in the open.
Yeah.
I remember talking about white supremacy in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
But we didn't say it in the mic, unless you were, selling incense on the corner of 175th or whatever. It wasn't necessarily going down like that.
Yeah, I like the idea
of
that is the open.
But, and of course, nah, we at war, but we've been at war. We've been at war.
But like you said, the attack even on, you say critical race theory, which was never taught in schools, and they know it was never taught in schools. But I had a good friend who said, the problem with critical race theory is And even when the right chose that as the place to attack, they said, oh, there's a brand that we can go after, right? And the problem is, I said, critical race theory is not critical race, that's just American history. And so that is a branding problem, you know.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the first time I heard them talk, I was like, what are they talking? Critical race theory. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what the fuck they were talking about. Then I'm like, oh, you mean structural, you mean the shit that we've been knowing our whole fucking lives? That's what the fuck you calling critical race theory?
That's American history. It's like,
oh.
yeah.
They never taught that shit. I mean, I went to Morehouse. And so, and not even them. No, I'm joking. I like to pick on the elitist bullshit that they represent, but I do love people. No, I do think, I mean, so yes, we certainly were having those discussions in some classrooms, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But we had to go to those locations and in those circles to have those conversations, right? I went there for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. To shift gears, we've been using the word politics and the political quotient. Right? So when we talk about things as being branded political or described as political, as though there are those things which aren't political. And the argument that, you know, that the political quotient is not something inherent to the thing, but perhaps how we see the thing. And I was wondering if you could talk a bit about a definition of politics for you in that regard. When are all things political, and it being a question of how we see them?
I do think that all things are political. I used to be flabbergasted and so upset at, like, you know, people, I don't know, like Michael Jordan or whatever, who'd be like, I'm not political. I'm like, that is a political statement. So you see it in my body. I'm like, oh, I can't take it when we try to disassociate those things and we play political games. I mean, there's politics and posture.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
Like, I remember the first time I did acid. I only did it once, actually. And I remember being with my boy Scott in Brooklyn. I was like, holy shit. Every position that I'm taking here is a pose that I use to communicate that I'm not gay. Every shit, I have all these tendencies, you know, tied into this idea of masculinity that is supposed to convey this message that's somewhere between don't fuck with me and I'm not gay. Why am I so concerned about how I hold my wrist? I remember being taught in school about the politics of language, right? Language is embedded in politics. And it hurts me. It hurts me every day because I hear us say shit all the time. I'm like, don't say that, don't say that. They'll be like, oh, you're not gonna like this. This is really dark. And I'm like, I'm really dark. You know, everybody here does it. Everybody here would talk about some series and be like, I liked it. It's kind of dark, but I'm like, how deep does it go? How much is it embedded in our, is it, because when you learn, for example, that expression or idea of darkness is really tied to the English language. If you're speaking other languages, you're probably not going to describe that same thing that is on the fringes of evil, scary, frightening. You may not describe it as dark. But it's hard to fathom that. The politics of language are heavy. It's really dark. And me, I hate being sensitive to it, you know what I'm saying? Because I can't not hear it. It'll be motherfuckers I love their politics, I love everything. And they'll just be tweeting like freely, like, this is not from my book, this is just about this show I'm watching. It's kind of dark. I'm like, fuck. You know? And so, that type of awareness, though, in terms of the politics in everything, in all of these choices and decisions, I guess some could find, you know, like it infringes upon just a simple freedom. Like, you know, I like to just let it out. What the fuck, you know, when can I just chill? But yeah, everything is political. Sorry. Yeah, it's all there. But, you know, it's not just because it's political doesn't mean it's necessarily good or bad. It's a spectrum of politics. It's not binary. You know, it's not good or bad, or black or white, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You know, it's, yeah.
All right. I think no, it was fine. I think that was a spot-on example in terms of, you know, politics in language. Just what registers as dark. But yeah, I thought we could open it up to questions. You know, if that's okay. These are very bright lights. And so bear with us if we have a hard time spotting you, especially if you're in this middle area with a question. And there's a microphone making its way around. So I've got someone here.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for being here. This is wonderful. I don't have a question, and I unfortunately just have a addendum, maybe?
Oh, sorry.
The poet that you were talking about is Bob Kaufman, not Bob Holman.
Bob Kaufman. I said Bob Holman?
Yeah.
You said Holman.
That's because I just got an email from Bob Holman. Bob Kaufman.
Yes. I
Bob
just wanted
Kaufman.
everybody to know that it's Bob Kaufman. He's
I appreciate that, because if somebody would have been there like Bob Holman, the New Rican Bowery Poetry Club.
Right. Yeah. Bob Kaufman he coined the term beat poetry and never got any credit for it. So just so you're
And
looking
you know,
for the
he
right
coined the
person.
term beat poetry because he would stand on top of police cars and recite his poems, and he'd be like, look at how they're beating this nigga down. This is beat nig poetry, beat nig poetry. Am I lying?
Yeah.
That's what a beatnik is. Bob Kaufman, who said, my Negro suit has Jew stripes. Yeah. yeah. Okay, we gotta stop, y'all.
There we go.
Showcased at the Cannes Film Festival last year.
What was the experience showcasing the film at Cannes?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the industry, it's supposed to be an honor, right? And we knew that that would help set us up for what's happening tomorrow. That, you know, our goal, of course, was to have the possibility of everybody being able to see this film. To be able, you know, there are thousands of films made every year, and not all of them see release. And ours is a foreign language African film. And you don't see a lot of foreign language African films in this country. And when you do, they might only make it to New York and LA, and they usually need to win some awards in order to even arrive in those cities, you know, in terms of on the big screen, you know. So on that end, it was positive. But the reality, if you really want to know, it was like this. The first question at the premiere, for example, was a French man who raised his hand and somebody handed him the mic, and he said, "I see through the film that there's daylight in Rwanda, so why would you shoot so much of the film at night? Don't you know that black people are difficult to see at night?" That was the first question we ever got for this movie that we put our hearts into. And in a nutshell, part of the experience of Cannes was that. Part of the experience of Cannes, you know, which was, because you should understand in terms of France and the colonial imprint on the continent, you know, they have a fund that funds films throughout the continent, particularly in the francophone regions of the continent, but throughout the continent. And that fund, like the majority of films that come from the continent, if they're not coming from Nigeria or South Africa, have taken money from France. And once you take that money, the first thing is you have to either hire an entire French crew or many members of a French crew, and 55 to 65% of your film needs to be in French, which has motherfuckers across the world thinking like, oh, you know, well, yeah, everybody speaks French in Senegal. He'd be like, oh, these niggas speaking well off. Not everybody speaks French. Like, that's the colonial language. But it makes you put your films in the colonial language. So we had to be really mindful of who we accepted money from. If we got Hollywood money, the film would have to be in English, and I don't know, you know, Matthew McConaughey would have to jump out in some scene and be like, what the fuck is going on here, you know? And if it was in French, you know, it would have to be in French all of a sudden. You wouldn't have the opportunity to hear the beautiful language that you'll hear in this film. And so Cannes also represented that sense of, how the fuck do y'all make an African film without no French money? We felt a lot of that. As a matter of fact, we were in the selection called the Director's Fortnight, which is the same selection that my film Slam had been in 1998. And, thank you. And we were at a cocktail party, as they do in Cannes. And 3 of the 6 selectors came over, and they called over one more, a fourth, and they said, hey, we just want you to know that when we saw your film, unanimously, we said that we wanted your film to open the festival. We just wanted you to know that. We were like, well, why the fuck didn't you do that? That would have been awesome. They said, well, when the chairman came back, they said that we couldn't open with your film because you didn't have any French financing in the film, and we need to support our sponsors. So it felt like that too, you know, if I'm honest. So, yeah.
Just thank you so much for all the words that you've said tonight. I'm just, you know, humbled to be counted in the number this evening. I hail from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm here visiting my friend here. And she brought me here because I wanted to see some cultural things going on in LA and everything. I teach U.S. history, government, politics, U.S. history through film, and economics in South Carolina at a public residential art school called the South Carolina Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities. And, you know, it's a tough time we're in that you so clearly articulated. And I just wanted to know if you have any thoughts about being in the current state of education the way that I am, how to continue to embolden and encourage the next generation of young minds as they continue to hone their creative skill. I believe that representation matters, and at my school we don't have a lot of representation. I was actually telling my friend I wish one of our students, who's an awesome poet, she was going through a thing at our school, and nationally. She's one of the national poet presidential scholars, but she writes in free verse, and they were giving her a lot of shit about it, essentially. And but she stood her ground, and so I just was wondering if you had any thoughts about how to continue to cultivate political activism and awareness and in the arts as well.
I'm sure. No, my first thought as you're speaking is you know, I have no business being up here. I mean, I know how it is to have released art and suddenly you're asked to sit on a stage or something. But like many of you, I've been home for the last 2 years talking to myself, watching shit. I have no idea if anything coming out of my mouth makes any sense. But sure, I'll share my opinion. I'll do it here. I rarely will tweet it. I believe in reading. I believe that, one, that good writing comes from great reading. I grew up outside of New York City initially in a small town called Newburgh, New York, and the way that I traveled was through reading. I feel like I'm flexing now when I say that I was reading Octavia Butler as a teenager. It is a flex. It's a little bit of a flex. But now I know it's kind of weird to say this because you teach in the public system, and it's real that the suggestion of certain books and all that can be problematic. But, you know, when it comes to opening young minds, and I have kids, I hand them books that they don't always read. I share music with them, films. Sometimes I'll just shoot them a link of something like, check this out. They probably don't fuck with any of it, you know, because they need to discover it themselves. But anyway, I think that the most beautiful thing that you are giving the children that you are personally encountering is your presence. I think the fact that this country does not inspire many more of us to become teachers is part of the problem, that we are not paying teachers. My mom taught kindergarten for 34 years. I really believe in teachers. I am the son of a teacher. And I am who I am very much so because of my mom and what she told me to read, and the book. It was her actually who was reading Octavia Butler, and it was me. I would take the book from her, actually. And people will want to point to my dad, who was a preacher, but that, you know, maybe he gave me some cadence. You know? But For example, like when I told my mom I wanted to be an actor, I came home from school at like 9 and told my parents, I want to be an actor when I grow up. And my dad was like, I'll support you as an actor if you get a law degree. And my mom, like right then, so quick, was like, oh, so you should do your next school report on Paul Robeson. He was a lawyer and an actor. Pretty fucking awesome, right? Because every school report I did from then on was on Paul Robeson. It's not like I was trying to repeat the report. I would study another aspect of Paul Robeson's life because to this day, I'm reading Shauna Redmond's book on Paul Robeson right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, there have been great minds and great activists and all of these stuff, and there's so much to pull from. These kids having you is one thing, and you exposing them to all of these, you know, like, I think of that. I have a poem called Code of Language where I just list a bunch of names, because it's just not enough time. So I'm just like, well, I got 5 minutes. I'm going to call up all the names. Maybe you'll look them up, you know? It's first and foremost, I think your presence there and your interest in them is a lot. It's a lot. It's probably more than you realize, or maybe you do. I have no idea, you know? But I want to commend you for that. After that, if you expose them to what inspires you, that's enough.
So we've got a few hands. We got a few over here. Raph here.
Their hands real high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello. So I've been a grassroots organizer for quite some time now. And when I was in middle school, I was listening to you, I was watching you, and you were definitely a piece of the puzzle because there weren't really many black alternative kids. I moved 38 times, most of it being around Los Angeles. And I always felt comfortable learning quietly and reading. So I appreciate the previous question because I didn't have a black teacher until I was in high school, and it was my senior year. My question for you is, you growing up in New York and being able to go to Rwanda and make a film and have your hands in the film in a way where others aren't buying their way into a film or it being coded in white savior or white guilt in Africa, in the way that that affected your politic, with the context of that experience and you making that film rather than just being in it, how did that attribute to how you ground yourself in politics when something awful happens? Like, how did that recontextualize how you viewed yourself in the scope of what you've already accomplished?
It don't help. No, I'm one thing. I appreciate your question and also what you shared in terms of you know, where you found inspiration and what have you coming up. Because when my parents were also activists, and I grew up surrounded by activists and activism. And I have sought to provide resources. I mean, I really believe that people should play their lane, so to speak. You make music? Great. Write a song. That's simple. contribute in the way that you can, that you're inspired to, that in a way that excites you. I have sought to provide stuff that maybe inspires young activists sometimes. They go, yeah, whew. And they may not even grow up to be activists. They may just grow up happy to think about these things in this way and know that they're not alone, right? But, and let me know if I'm not answering your question properly. I'm not, just if I didn't understand it properly. Yet in terms of when things go down, when things go wrong in society as they are repetitively, absolutely nothing with what I have done has made me feel like, okay, well, I tried. Or whatever, I don't know. I do know this in relationship to the film. I can't speak on this because the film is very much about technology. It's very much about, you know, the world that we browse on our timelines and what have you. And over the past 7 years as I was writing it, I was making a conscious effort, I think my draft pages on Twitter are like gold. Like I never tweet any of that shit. Instead, I put it in the film. I found a way to incorporate every feeling, every response, every observation into the story. Which is why the critics will be like, it's a very layered narrative. And I do think there's something, you know, I do take a sense of, I don't know if I'd call it, but I would like to think that if you pay to see this film, or even if you don't pay and see this film, for example, because it goes for anything ever shared, that you might walk away with more than what you paid for. And know it, like, this is a steal. You know, like this, I want you to feel that thing that I felt when I heard that or watched that. There's a million points of inspiration for me as an artist. It's not like I'm home listening to myself. I'm inspired by others, you know? And that's a way of paying it forward. You want people to be charged, you know? And I love when art is a charging place. When it's a charging place. And of course it can be that without speaking to the thing, but it can also be it when it speaks to the thing, you know? When it speaks directly to the subject at hand. Now, like I said, I don't know if I'm answering your question. Do I get any from the accomplishments? I think that every, you know, like when I started witnessing the rise of, let's say, Black Lives Matter, or just seeing young activists, particularly young Black women, speak today, including my daughter, coming back, like, just saying shit. I mean, some of it would be just, you know, she might be like, well, you're a colorist. I'm like, but I wrote Black Stacy. Okay. You think I wasn't thinking about that? You know, but we have these conversations like, well, still, colorism is about, okay. I'm glad that you're thinking about this shit, but damn. Really? But I'm so excited about the fact that this shit is being talked about. I'm so excited that it's being talked about. I'm so excited that it's not just homegirl in the corner who's talking about bell hooks. That when I say bell hooks, everybody's like, yeah, bell hooks. The Will to Change. The Will to Change. Men in the room, The Will to Change. It's a great book. Check it out. Yeah, there's nothing to rest on in those moments, though. It's ever forward. It's like, okay, what do we do? And I never have the answer. I'm like, as you're building, I mean, like Fela is like, music is the weapon of the future. You know? So I wrote a musical, like, I'm building a song. It's gonna really, we try our best, you know? We try our best. That's how I feel half the time, like just trying. Does that at least dance around your question in a way that's all right? It is my answer. And I approve of it.
So I don't know how we're doing on time.
Oh, is there? Hi, my name is, hello, how's
Okay.
everybody? Hope y'all doing good. All right. My name is Jessica. I'm so happy to be here. Checked everything out about who you are as a man and what you represent. I also saw that you're vegan. You know, kudos to you. Are you vegan?
Oh, did you say vegan?
Vegan.
No, I'm not vegan. I was.
All right.
I was vegan for about 10 years.
Okay, because I was looking at it and that's what they said. But you know what? Moving on.
Oh, I wouldn't read my Wikipedia page. I don't know if it's true.
Okay, right. But you were for 10 years. That's almost a decade.
I did do 10 years.
Okay,
yeah.
then. All right. So Google was half right. All right. So my question for motivation, let's talk about motivation, inspiration. As an artist myself, you know, I came up as a violinist. Also, I'm an actress as well, and I also work in production. I swung over to production because I lost a lot of my motivation for the artistic side. I lost a lot of the motivation for my artistic side, so I swung over into production, right? So what I'm asking you right now is about motivation, you know, just how to get past the blocks, the hearsay. You know, there's a lot of times people will be in your ear. I just talked to someone who was really good on social media platforms, right? And so they always talk about, you know, you have to stay consistent, you have to consistently post, this, that, and the third. For me, I want to put out things that I want to put out and not be concerned about what other people think about it. And so that leads me in a place, it's a dark cloud from time to time because you know, because Amanda Seals, you know, she says whatever and then she still gets booked, you know, and different things. And maybe she's been blackballed at other times because it happens, just contingent upon what it is that you say. And I have a podcast, so that's what I'm, you know, getting to next. How do you stay motivated? How do you stay real and true to yourself and still make a way to still get booked all at the same time? You know, like how does that storm come about? Because it puts me in a depression.
I hear you. I hear you. So first of all, that feeling that you have that's like, I want to post what I want. I don't want to care about what other people. You are correct. Go with that. All right? Go with that. I remember when I was in acting school, I was in grad school for acting, so I was very close to stepping out into the real world, but I wasn't there yet. And I remember the moment where I had to stop reading magazines. There was no social media then, but there was like Vibe magazine and shit, and you could see shit like Next and all this stuff, and you could be there like, I can't wait, nigga, I can't wait. You know what I'm saying? And you and I found myself, that energy was off. You know? I was so thankful for like that that like Rakim lyric from back in the day. I know you guys don't know Rakim, but me. I'm teasing y'all. It's one thing I don't need as a spotlight because I already got light. That whole thing of just like, of not seeking it. Because as an artist, the role of jealousy, the role of wanting what somebody else achieves, what do you mean, Zoe Kravitz? You know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that shit could be very real. It can be very real, especially if it's someone that feels close to like, I could do that. Please, And there was a moment when I realized that if I put my focus on making sure the shit I was doing was on a fucking level, I would never have to seek the attention that it would come. But we do need to talk about that level. Because there's tons of ways in which you could be like, my shit is already on a level, and you can have all the confidence you want. But if your references, and by references I mean the shit you check for, the shit you read, the shit you watch, the shit from, if you think it only happens here and there and you're not paying attention to what happened there, and like what happened in the past and and using all of that to elevate your shit to a level where it is truly unique. Truly unique. Meaning, like an 80-year-old could listen to your podcast and be like, yo, I never heard no shit like that in my fucking life, and I've heard a lot of shit. It does require a level of work that has to supersede the confidence. We put a lot of emphasis on confidence. But I think that confidence needs to be rooted in real deep dives in obscure and not so obscure reading, artists, all this shit, just real politicians, all this shit, I mean, I went through ages where they were calling me a poet and I refused to call myself a poet. I was like, I cannot, like, they'd be like, are you, this is after slam. They'd be like, you are a poet. And we're like, they say that I am. But what do? I write. What do you write? I write poems, so you're a poet. Well, I write poems. Why? Because I felt like I hadn't read enough poetry to be walking around like, yo, I'm a poet. Like, have you read Pasolini yet? Have you read this yet? Did you go that direction yet? Do you know who Sappho is? Have you? Are you sure? Edward Glissant. What about? Oh no, I don't know shit about Edward Glissant. Nigga, you better. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't mean to be so freak. This is how I talk at home. My point is, but learning is fun. Mastering your shit and building it up is fun. It's so fun. It's amazing to learn these things. I enjoy remaining a student, So, I don't think that we, because you did say, and get booked, right? You want all of that, right? And so we find the balance between, the fit, and what's beneath it, what's inside, and all of that. And we take our time. It may not happen on the timeline that you imagine, but time. I'm born on February 29th. I could tell you a lot about time. All right? Honestly, I mean, I'm 12 years old. I may not live to see 25, But but honestly, that timeline is it is what it is. I sent demos to Rick Rubin when I was 14. He signed me when I was 27 or some shit. I was like, what the fuck happened? He was so late. What happened? Slam came out when I was 26. I was on the verge of giving up, like, it's too late. You know what I'm saying? Maya Angelou came out with the first book of poetry at the age of 42. All right? Stay up. It's all right. That's it, huh? Thank you all. One thing to say. Thank you very much. That's very kind. I do need to be clear. I'm sorry to do this, but we're collecting offering. No. Neptune Frost is independent as fuck, and we need you all to go to the theater this weekend if you can. This was free, so maybe you can find a way. Bring friends, I promise, and let people know what you think. If you like it, if you don't like it, call them on the phone. All right? Just call them on the phone. All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you again to Hamza and Saul. What a powerful, insightful conversation and inspiring. Again, please do go check out Neptune Frost this weekend. This is a conversation that you can revisit over and over and over again. So many gems, so we hope that you do that via our YouTube page. Please take some time to visit our Mario Moore and Body and Text exhibitions before you leave this evening. Thank you again to our partners at UCLA. I'm sorry, wrong night. Our partners at the LA Philharmonic, excuse me. And thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you back here at CAM very soon. Have a good night and be safe. Thank you.